All right, here in the second PSA that I really want us to look at for this chapter, we're going to look at the Omaha platform of the People's Party in 1892. Now, this one's a little bit longer, but I really want you to read through and take your time and go through this. And I really want you to think about how does what the People's Party and what are they arguing for and what are they standing for? How is that in contrast to what was going on at the time in the United States? So, in 1892, the People's or the Populist Party crafted a platform that indicted the corruptions of the Gilded Age and promised government policies to aid, quote unquote, the people. And here is the platform, the preamble. The conditions which surround us best justify our cooperation. We meet in the midst of a nation brought on the verge of moral, political, and material ruin. Corruption dominates the ballot box, the legislatures, the Congress, and touches even the ermine of the bench. The people are demoralized. Some of the states have been compelled to isolate the voters at the polling places to prevent universal intimidation and bribery. The newspapers are largely subsidized or muzzled, public opinion silenced, business prostrated, homes covered with mortgages, labor impoverished, and land concentrating in the hands of capitalists. The urban workmen are denied the right to organize for self-protection. Imported pauperized labor beats down the wages. A hireling standing army, unrecognized by our laws, is established to shoot them down, and they are rapidly degenerating into European conditions. The fruits of the toil of millions are boldly stolen to build up colossal fortunes for a few, unprecedented in the history of mankind, and the possessors of those, in turn, despise the republic and endanger liberty. For the same prolific womb of governmental injustice, we breed the two great classes, tramps and millionaires. The national power to create money is appropriated to enrich bondholders. A vast public debt payable to legal tender currency has been funded into gold-bearing bonds, thereby adding millions to the burdens of the people. Silver, which has been accepted as coin since the dawn of history, has been demonetized to add to the purchasing power of gold by decreasing the value of all forms of property as well as human labor, and the supply of currency is purposely abridged to fatten usurers, bankrupt enterprise, and enslave industry. A vast conspiracy against mankind has been organized on two continents and is rapidly taking possession of the world. If not met and overthrown at once, it forebodes terrible social convulsions, the destruction of civilization, or the establishment of an absolute despotism. We have witnessed for more than a quarter of a century the struggles of two great political parties for power and plunder, while grievous wrongs have been inflicted upon the suffering people. We charge that the controlling influence dominating both these parties have permitted the existing dreadful conditions to develop without serious effort to prevent or restrain them. Neither do they now promise us any substantial reform. They have agreed together to ignore in the coming campaign every issue but one. They propose to drown the outcries of a plundered people with the uproar of a sham battle over the tariff, so that capitalists, corporations, national banks, rings, trusts, watered stock, the demonetization of silver, and the oppressions of the users may all be lost sight of. They propose to sacrifice our homes, lives, and children on the altar of Mammon, to destroy the multitude in order to secure corruption funds for millionaires. Assembled on the anniversary of the birthday of the nation and filled with the spirit of the grand general in chief who established our independence, we seek to restore the government of the republic to the hands of the plain people with which class it originated. We assert our purposes to be identical with the purposes of the national constitution, to form a more perfect union and establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. We declare that this republic can only endure as a free government while built upon the love of the whole people for each other and for the nation. It cannot be pinned together by bayonets, that the Civil War is over, and every passion and resentment which grew out of it must die with it, and that we must, in fact, as we are in name, one united brotherhood of free men. Our country finds itself confronted by conditions for which there is no precedent in history of the world. Our annual agricultural production amount to billions of dollars in value, which must, within a few weeks or months, be exchanged for billions of dollars of commodities consumed in their production. The existing currency supply is wholly inadequate to make this exchange. The results are falling prices, the formation of combines and rings, the impoverishment of the producing class. We pledge ourselves that if given power, we will labor to correct these evils by wise, reasonable legislation in accordance with the terms of our platform. We believe that power of government, in other words, of the people, should be expanded, as in the case of the Postal Service, as rapidly and as far as the good sense of an intelligent people and the teachings of experience shall justify, to the end that oppression, injustice, and poverty shall eventually cease in the land. While our sympathies as a party of reform are naturally upon the side of every proposition which will tend to make men intelligent, virtuous, and temperate, we nevertheless regard these questions, important as they are, as secondary to the great issues now pressing for solution, and upon which not only our individual prosperity, but the very existence of free institutions depend. And we ask all men to first help us determine whether we have a republic to administer before we differ as to the conditions upon which it is to be administered, believing that the forces of reform this day organized will never cease to move forward until every wrong is remedied and equal rights and equal privileges securely established for all men and women of this country. To the platform. We declare, therefore, first, that the union of labor forces in the United States this day consummated shall be permanent and perpetual. May its spirit enter into all hearts for the salvation of the republic and the uplifting of mankind. Second, wealth belongs to him who creates it, and every dollar taken from the industry without an equivalent is robbery. If any will not work, neither shall he eat. The interests of rural and civic labor are the same. Their enemies are identical. Third, we believe that the time has come when the railroad corporations will either own the people or the people must own the railroads. And should the government enter upon the work of owning and managing all railroads, we should favor an amendment to the Constitution by which all persons engaged in the government service shall be placed under a civil service regulation for the most rigid character, so as to prevent the increase of power of the national administration by the use of such additional government employees. Finance. We demand a national currency, safe, sound, and flexible, issued by the general government only, a full legal tender for all debts, public and private, and without the use of banking corporations, a just, equitable, and efficient means of distribution direct to the people, at a tax not to exceed 2% per annum, to be provided as set forth in the sub-treasury plan of the Farmers Alliance, or a better system, also by payments and discharge of its obligations for public improvements. 1. We demand free and unlimited coinage of silver and gold at the present legal ratio of 16:1. We demand that the amount of circulating medium be speedily increased to no less than $50 per capita. We demand a graduated income tax. We believe that money of the country shall be kept as much as possible in the hands of the people, and hence we demand that all state and national revenues shall be limited to the necessary expenses of the government, economically and honestly administered. We demand that postal savings banks be established by our government for the safe deposit of the earnings of the people and to facilitate exchange. In transportation means being a means of exchange and public necessity. The government should own and operate the railroads in the interest of the people. The telephone, like the post office system, being a necessity for the transmission of news, shall be owned and operated by the government in the interest of the people. Land. The land, including all natural sources of wealth, is the heritage of the people and should not be monopolized for speculative purposes. An alien ownership of land shall be prohibited. All land now held by railroads and other corporations in excess of their actual needs, and all lands now owned by aliens, should be reclaimed by the government and held for actual settlers only. Expressions of sentiments. Your Committee on Platform and Resolutions beg leave unanimously to report the following. Whereas other questions have been presented for our consideration, we hereby submit the following, not as part of the platform of the People's Party, but as resolutions expressive of the sentiment of this convention. Resolved, that we demand a free ballot and fair count in all elections and pledge ourselves to secure it to every legal voter without federal intervention, through the adoption by the states of the unperverted Australian or secret ballot system. Resolved, the revenue derived from a graduated income tax should be applied to the reduction of the burden of taxation now levied upon the domestic industries of this country. Resolved, that we pledge our support to the fair, liberal pensions to ex-Union soldiers and sailors. Resolved, that we condemn the fallacy of protecting American labor under the present system, which opens our ports to the pauper and criminal classes of the world and crowds out of our wage crowds out our wage earners, and we denounce the present ineffective laws against contract labor and demand further restriction of undesirable immigration. Resolved, that we cordially sympathize with the efforts of organized workingmen to shorten the hours of labor and demand a rigid enforcement of the existing 8-hour law on government work, and ask that penalty clause shall be added to the said law. Resolved, that we regard the maintenance of large standing army of mercenaries known as the Pinkerton system as a menace to our liberties and demand its abolition. Resolved, that we commend to the favorable consideration of the people and the reform of the press the legislative system known as the initiative and referendum. We favor a constitutional provision limiting the office of President and Vice President to one term and providing for the election of senators and of the United States by direct vote of the people. Resolved, that we oppose any subsidy or national aid to any private corporation for any purpose. Resolved, that this convention sympathizes with the Knights of Labor and their righteous contest with the tyrannical combine of clothing manufacturers of Rochester, and declare it to be a duty of all who hate tyranny and oppression to refuse to purchase the goods made by the said manufacturers, or to patronize any merchants who sell such goods. Now, as you look back through this, I want you to answer a few questions. First, are the People's Party, would they be today considered conservative or liberal? Now, that may require you to go and kind of do a little bit of research on what it means to be conservative or liberal, and where do you think that these people would fall? So if you did a scale of 1 to 10, with liberal, far left liberal being at the 1, and the ultra-right conservatives being at the 10, where do you believe that this platform falls on that scale? And why? 2, how does this stand in contrast to the other primary source that we read by Sumner? Do they believe the same things or different things? And how so? And thirdly, what aspects of this platform are now part of our American system? There are many different parts here, and I think that it is important as you read through this to think about what we have now adopted, and also understand that the People's Party completely fell apart and would be considered one of the most unsuccessful in accomplishing their goals at the time. With those 3 questions, I want you to write a short response, talking briefly about 1 or 2 of those questions, but consider all 3. Thank you.